show in New Zealand. And right now it's time for that time when we talk to our special guest. Tonight our special guest is the leader of the ACT Party, David Seymour. The countdown continues to what is becoming a very exciting and close election. Just 12 days to go. And David wants you to know that the ACT Party, it's alive and well with 42 candidates nationwide, just waiting for the big party vote tick. David Seymour, welcome to The Beat Goes On.
Thank you.
The most exciting time in any politician's life is right now.
It reminds me of what a wonderful country we live on.
Yeah.
You can actually door knock probably 100 doors in a day. Anyone who says they can do more probably has never done it.
It's hard work, isn't it?
But out of that, I usually find that 1 in 100 people are actually rude. So, we have this fabulous democracy where people are mostly civil, and with a bit of luck, we get to better government at the end of it.
Yeah. Face recognition is good now with
that's probably
Epsom.
That's probably the biggest thing that's changed, is that previously I'd have to go through the whole, hi, I'm David, I'm running for Parliament, ACT Party.
Which took 5 minutes.
Whereas now I sort of say, hi, I'm David, and they go, yeah, we know. Welcome. So that's kind of nice. Yeah. So that's been quite a change. But the challenge for me in ACT is persuading people out there that actually, if you like ACT, then the fact I'm winning in Epsom means that we only need about 30,000 votes nationwide to get a second ACT MP. Yep, and we get sort of 45, 50,000, we get a third ACT MP. So it actually doesn't take a lot of people to rebuild ACT and bring us back as a party of several MPs this time. That's quite exciting, but I've got to get out there and communicate it.
And some people might have thought to themselves, oh, Jacinda's doing well. I better give my party vote to National because I'm a National Party supporter. And once you might have had the luxury of giving your party vote to, say, Winston or the Greens, now people are saying to themselves, oh, it's so close. But you can give it to ACT if you're a National supporter, because you are going to support the National Party, aren't you?
Well, that's true. And, the question is, if you think that the Nats have got a bit soft and run out of ideas, but you still want to keep Labour out, then, I'd just suggest that a party vote to ACT, more ACT MPs, might actually just liven things up a bit, because one thing that I think we're realising right now is that the right of politics can't win with just one party. And if you go through the potential parties on the right, well, National are in good shape, but they can't do it themselves. Maori Party have been in the government, but they're actually opposed to most of what the government does. Peter Dunn's done and dusted. And New Zealand First, every time they've been in government, it has been a disaster, leading to Winston Peters getting sacked and serious fraud office investigations and so on. So you go through the possibilities. If you want to keep Labour and the Greens out, National are not a bad bet, but ACT's actually essential, and that's the case for giving a party vote to ACT.
What's Bill English like as a person? Do you like him?
I really like Bill as a person. And,
I quite like him.
I've been able to partner well with him. Things like partnership schools, just this week we announced 4 new schools opening. These schools are changing kids' lives for the better, and I'm really proud of that. That's something that I've been able to work on with Bill. We need to work better together on housing because, frankly, the National Party hasn't had the political will to do much about the housing market. And the fact is that people whose doors I knock on in Epsom will say, look, pretty happy my house is worth 2 or 3 mil, but I realise if I was to sell it, I just have to buy in the same market. Meanwhile, I've got 2 kids, and I'm a bit worried they're going to both come and ask me for 20% of $2 million. It was $800,000 because I know they could never save that themselves. So the housing issue is one where frankly the Nats haven't been ambitious enough. The government that we're in has failed, and we're in political trouble for that reason. But it's not too late to give the housing issue some impetus and say next Parliament we're going to replace the RMA because it's just a dog at this point. It can't be amended or reformed anymore. And we're going to start funding infrastructure properly, take the pressure off the ratepayers by giving some of the GST on construction back to infrastructure in the region where the construction happens.
Now, David, all these ideas, they can be found in your brand new book.
They're all in my book, which has been selling like hotcakes, by the way. Own Your Future. We've sold a couple of thousand copies already.
Yeah.
Not bad for a New Zealand book.
No.
And look, Own Your Future is a series of positive, practical solutions to the problems New Zealand faces. For example, in the book we show how you can make prisoners want to learn to read in prison.
Yeah.
And the answer is that we'll say, look, if you learn to read, we'll give you a discount on your sentence. If you're just going to waste away and come out as someone just as likely to reoffend, you do your full sentence. Either way, giving people choices.
What's your prediction for this election? They talk about Jacinda mania. It's completely. It was going to be a bit of a cakewalk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it's changed completely. Give us a quick roundup.
It'll never be a cakewalk. I mean, right now in Parliament, all the critical votes are 61-60.
Yeah.
So this term has been as close as you can get,
Yes,
a one-vote
exactly.
majority. Now, I think the question is going to be how the third parties do. I don't think there'll be a centre-right government unless ACT does well. Now, of course, I would say that, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, if we don't have ACT and National doing well together, then you've got Winston Peters choosing between Jacinda Ardern and Bill English. Now, remember, he's the vainest guy in the history of New Zealand politics, and he will decide to get his photo taken with the young and the up-and-coming and the glamorous Jacinda Ardern, rather than getting his photo taken with Bill English, the guy from the National Party, back where he started after all these years. So you don't have to be a psychologist to know which way Winston would go. So the alternative is for ACT and National to be strong
They've got to get in by themselves. Yep.
Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, a really terrifying scenario is Labour, Green, Māori. And at that point, it actually brings back what New Zealand was like back in the sort of early 2000s, where 40,000 people a year left, and it felt like the socialists were menacing, they were in charge, and they were running us out of our own country. I've felt that feeling come back in the last couple of weeks, and I don't want to see it in New Zealand again. I want to be prosperous, open to the world and growing. That's what we need if we want New Zealand to succeed. We could go so far backwards so rapidly. It's just not funny, but I think some people have forgotten that after the last 9 years of relative stability.
Were you shocked when John Key resigned?
No.
Did that take you back?
No. I mean, look, he had a couple of issues. One is that he'd achieved everything he wanted to achieve. He never came in to be a great reformer. He didn't have anything to hang out for. His big idea was changing the flag. But he didn't have big issues that he wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
The next thing I'd say is that he had started to lose some of his popularity, and he was quite open about it. And the real genius of John Key, and I do think he was a genius in many respects, is that he could see the writing on the wall, and he knew it was time to go. He didn't want to stick around for his own political funeral, so he went. And of course, people have invented all these crazy theories about the real reason he left. No, he just he'd done what he wanted to do.
He had enough intelligence to see that you basically 12 years is 9 to 12 years is a long time.
He had nothing left he wanted to achieve. His popularity was waning. He was smart enough to see it. That simple.
Now, what about David Seymour? He's now done 3 years, haven't you?
Yep.
And that means you've got another 9 before you have to make that same decision. So when are you? Where are you heading, David? I mean, you're articulate. It says on your website that not your website, your Wikipedia, that you're intelligent, witty, and articulate. You could be Prime Minister.
Well,
couldn't you?
Well, who
How's
knows?
that going to happen?
Look, my goal and my role in life is to rebuild an ACT party. So I want to retire from ACT, have found some successes, and have someone to vote for that's on the right, that's a party of ideas, believes in small government and personal freedom. I mean, that's my project. So I need to get the party vote up to 2 or 3% this election, bring in another 3 or 4 members of Parliament for ACT, and hopefully within that field find a successor, so that in the sort of early 2020s we'll have a number of people that can keep the party going without me. So I'm not in it for a lifetime career, but I'm just here to make sure that people who want smaller government and personal freedom and innovative ideas like partnership schools actually are able to have someone to vote for. That's all I'm in it for.
How many ACT people standing in the 60 electorate seats? You've got 40.
So 42.
42, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of interviews and talking to people. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
well, we've been really impressed by the calibre of people that
Yeah.
have come forward. I mean, you look at our top 10 candidates, you've got 5 men, 5 women. Altogether, they speak 8 different languages.
Wow.
You know, you've got people who are parents, you've got people who are relatively young, you've got people with law and economics, you know, you've got an engineer, you've got a whole range of different people, award-winning businesswomen, people that have sat on local government. Our top 10 candidates, very impressive, and they're, you know, frankly, I would say this, but they're better than many of my colleagues in current Parliament.
You could say that again.
Well, I mean,
that was a wonderful statement.
It is a House of Representatives down there, isn't it?
Yeah. One great thing about the baby boomers, this is a baby boomer chat show, and assisted dying. You're very into that, aren't you? That for a young man, for a 34-year-old man, to be concerned about that and have empathy for that, how did that come about?
Well, first of all, I'm very into people having the choice. I'm not into it per se, but look, I think it's an issue that we politicians have an obligation to act on. I watched Lucretia Seals. I was a little bit worried about you know, what assisted dying would mean. Would it be abused? Has it gone wrong in other countries? I spent a lot of time looking into it, and I just found that basically all the bad things you hear are myths, mostly put about by people whose real objection is spiritual. Now, there's some people who are legitimately concerned about how it could be abused and what it means, but I've found most of that stuff just doesn't stack up. So, look, I've written a bill that the Attorney General has said is totally compliant with the Bill of Rights Act. The previous assisted dying bills didn't get that tick of approval. So it's a very safe bill, and it gives people choice at the end of their life. People that are suffering should be able to die surrounded by loved ones, not, you know, committing suicide in a woodshed or horrible things that people have to do.
Well, I totally agree with you, and I think that it's changing, isn't it? That imagine you're in absolute pain and you're on these opioids and you're just keeping yourself alive, and to be able to say, look, next Saturday afternoon, get the family around and I want to say goodbye. I mean, it doesn't matter what the medical... I won't ever get well again. I'm riddled with cancer. Why can't a person just make that decision?
Yeah, and look, I mean, there are a few hoops you have to jump through to make this a reality. It's, you know,
2 doctors.
Two doctors have to examine you. You know, they have to be convinced you're either got a terminal illness that'll kill you within 6 months, or a degenerative condition that's never going to be cured, that you're suffering, that you've had time to think about it, that you're mentally stable, that you know what you're deciding. You know, you've got to go through that. But one of the interesting things is that people are starting to, you know, do, and I think the baby boomers will shake up death the way they've shaken up everything else in their life cycle. And people are starting to have, you know, weekend-long parties where everyone they've known comes to say goodbye. And some people find that distasteful, other people don't, but I think you should have that choice.
You could call it a rehearsal funeral.
Well, in a manner of speaking, you get to be there.
That's been one of the big things that you've pushed.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, John Key asked me to be a minister, which most MPs would die for. The limo and the 50 grand pay rise and all the rest. I turned that down because as a minister I wouldn't be able to keep this bill in the ballot. So it's been
because it was private members' bill.
Yeah, so it's been a bit expensive to do in different ways. But I think it was the right thing to do, and it was worth it. And the fact it's now going to be debated in the next Parliament, I think
you
is
can be a
critical.
minister now.
Well, who knows? Who knows?
What would you like? What ministry would you like?
Oh, I think I'd do environment because that puts you in charge of the Resource Management Act. And the Resource Management Act is the biggest problem that we've got in New Zealand today. I mean, you wonder why there's a shortage of housing and there's poor people living in cars and garages. Well, it's because, you know, the poorest New Zealanders used to spend a quarter of their income on housing. Now they spend over half. And that is a tragedy.
Something wrong there, isn't there?
Very.
Are you a climate change denier or a climate change supporter?
Well, I you know, you make it sound like it's either a rugby game or a religious festival. Look, it's not about denial or support.
Well, I'm
or
a
belief.
denier. I'll let you know. I'm a climate change denier.
Well, fair enough, but I mean, I think it's a scientific issue, and so, you know, science is about observing nature and working out what's true and what's not. Now, you know, I've looked at the evidence. I'm with Matt Ridley who says he's a lukewarmer.
A lukewarmer.
And, yep, and he says, look, climate is changing. I think most people agree with that.
Yeah, we all agree with that. But
humans have increased the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. No one disputes that. And they are linked. I think where it gets interesting, and I suspect what you're saying, is to what extent is the connection strong and how much of it is caused by human activity. At the moment we've got a bunch of mathematical models which are telling us what's going to happen far into the future. They may not be reliable, but I think taking a scientific approach is key.
Now, ACT is a right-wing party. Would you agree with that? Can I say that?
Well,
rightist.
Yeah.
Rightist.
I mean, when it comes to your money and your property, we want low taxes and light regulation, no intrusion. But when it comes to personal freedom, a lot of people would characterise us as more on the left, for wanting assisted dying, for instance.
No, I'm just saying we've got to finish now, but. Being on the right, were you happy about our wonderful leader in America, President Trump, being on the right and having such a surprise victory?
When he was first elected, I thought, this guy might be just what America needs to shake things up. They've got so much bureaucracy, so much sort of polite corruption going on in Washington.
Political correctness.
And unfortunately, I think he's just been a bit of a disaster. I mean, it seemed at first you think, he can't be crazy, he's just very, very clever. But it seems that since he's been in the White House, he doesn't have to create drama now, he has to get on with the job, and all we seem to get is the drama.
Well, I think he's learnt that after 8 months. I think it's all starting to calm down now. He's got Kelly in there as at in the White House staffing situation, General Kelly, and I think you'll see a huge change from now on.
Yeah, look, he's going to have a fix for New Zealand then. One is I think we're going to have to increase our military spending. He's basically going to say, look, if you guys want to be under our umbrella, you've got to pull your weight. So I suspect we're going to have to increase military spending at some time in the next few years. And that's a shame from the taxpayer's point of view because we're getting a nice free ride from the American taxpayer. And the second thing, I think, is that we're going to have to rethink trade because they're just not going to be willing to come to the party. So we now have TPP 11, a free trade agreement with Japan is one of the most exciting things that could possibly happen to New Zealand. But unfortunately, we're going to have to do trade without America.
Now, before you go, I'm going to wish you the best of luck for the 23rd. But every politician's nightmare would be to be in Trump's position. What would you do about North Korea?
Look,
what would you do if you... David, we've got to do something about North Korea. What would you do?
Look, one thing that Trump's done that was very smart is reaching out to Kim Jong-un and saying, I'd like to have a beer with him. Because ultimately, you look at it from Un's point of view, I'm not sure he is crazy. I think he pretends to be crazy, because if people didn't think he was crazy, they wouldn't think he was likely to use his weapons. And if they didn't think he's likely to use his weapons, they'd finish him off. So I think he's acted crazy because he's had to. I think he's rational. He just wants security. And offering to go and have a beer with the guy was actually pretty smart by Trump. You think it through. Because otherwise you're stuck in a deadlock where he has to develop a nuke or get nuked, and you have to stop him developing a nuke or lose political office. Now, that's the dilemma. There can be no winner there. So Trump's actually tried to find a creative solution. I think they should go and have a beer.
It's every politician's nightmare to have that situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
David.
Hey, Gerard, thank you very much.
The time goes so fast.
Sure does.
Thank you for coming on The Beat Goes On, and I'm hoping that if all goes well, we'll be seeing you in another 3 years' time.
Me too. Thank you very much.